Hello. We talked a lot about barriers and obstacles. I also want to talk about opportunities and about leadership. But first, let's start to talk a bit about the language-neutral digital single market. There are suggestions out there that maybe we can fix it very easily by just speaking English. And I mean, here in the room, this works well. I guess most of the decision makers don't have an issue with that. But there's a little problem with it. And let's have a look how Vice President Ansip has defined the essence of the digital single market. He said consumers need to be able to buy the best product at the best prices wherever they are in Europe. And consumers, that's everybody. That's not the professionals here in the room or people who actively speak English. That's everybody. The farmer in Romania, the steel worker in Germany, everybody. And half of Europeans, they don't speak a single word of English. And let's say another 45% have a passive knowledge of it. But when it comes to actively speak English, like writing or searching, they also cannot do it. In EU speak, this sounds a bit different. And there it says, and that's from this leaked document Marta mentioned, which was leaked last week. It says consumers should not be unfairly discriminated against when accessing content or buying goods and services online due to their nationality, residence, or geographical location. And what I find interesting here is how they try to avoid the L word, because language is not mentioned in the document. Well, it's mentioned only 2 times, and it's mentioned one when delivering DSIs, digital service infrastructures, and probably there the decision makers think about, well, let's translate the website, and it's mentioned when we talk about data. But these are the only 2 places. It's not mentioned here. Of course, when it comes to nationality, residence, geographical location, it's actually about language, of course. Another interesting sentence in there is that Europe should restore its position as a world leader in ICT. But they fail to say how, other than trying to catch up. And catching up won't happen. And I will show in this presentation how we could catch up and how we could become leaders. But let's first define the problem. This vision of every European consumer buying the best product at the best price wherever they are in Europe is already broken by a simple search. So let's assume you want to buy a grass mower. So you search. You go on one of these e-commerce sites where you can buy the stuff. But already by the word you're using, so I search for Rasenmäher or I search for Grasklipperer, already brings me into my national market. And I'm already caught in a language silo, but also in a product silo. And there might be products across the border, closer to me actually than where I buy it from, so it's not a delivery service problem, but I don't find it, because already a simple search breaks the vision of our vice president of the consumer being able to buy the best product no matter where they are. Last century's slogan is content is king, and in the sentence I've quoted before, they were talking about access to content. But I think they're lacking or missing a development here, because control over content has, in the recent years, shifted from companies to consumers and from governments to citizens, because a lot of content today is not created by companies and is not created by governments, but by us, because we write about products. We explain how to fix a certain problem. And when you, for example, have a problem with your iPhone or computer, in most cases you don't open a manual anymore, you even don't get a manual anymore, but you rather Google, and somebody has fixed the problem for you and explains how it's done. And of course that somebody, one of us, is always writing in his mother tongue. So actually, not content is king anymore, but knowledge is. Because as practical and handy this is, that consumers are creating content and taking that low away from companies, and citizens are creating content and taking that task away from civil servants, it also means that suddenly the knowledge about your products is not intramuros anymore, it's outside there. And knowledge and understanding what people are thinking, what buyers are buying, what is the next big thing, that makes winners or makes losers. So actually it's about knowledge and not content. And one of the reasons why big data is big is that we are creating it. There are millions of people out there, hundreds of millions, creating content. And in Europe, most of the content, or let's say half, is at least unstructured, which in the end is always text, which in Europe is always multilingual. So is machine translation the answer? So there, of course, the CEF initiative, or this CEF initiative of automated translation. And it's important, of course. But when it comes to knowledge extraction, is machine translation really the answer? Well, look at this flow. What you could do, of course, what you could propose is you have a piece of text, you machine translate it into English, and then you use your text analytics tool, which are today mainly only available in English. But the problem is that you chain up modules here, and the output of the one is the input of the next one. So machine translation is not perfect. So let's assume you achieve 80% precision. Text analytics is also not perfect. Let's assume you also achieve 80%. And these are already, let's say, positive numbers. Well, you multiply it, and you get to 0.6.4 hit rate, which already gets you very close to just flipping a coin to figure out whether something is a good sentiment or bad sentiment. So a more sophisticated and more result-leading infrastructure or architecture for processing multilingual data would be actually this. You have a piece of text. You need to figure out what language is it in to begin with. You have to somehow break it into words, into tokens. You have to do named entity detection and so on. And then you feed this into your processing like machine learning, text analytics, search. All these components, though, need to be customized. They need to be customized to the knowledge and to the domain you're actually looking at. So if a company is doing it, they have, of course, to put their own knowledge and their own terminology into this. Same with governments, whatever you need to do. So you somehow need to give these systems knowledge. And that knowledge is always multilingual. If you do this, then you get into insights, sense and sentiment. So you extract out of the data information you can act on. So for example, you run a campaign, you change a product feature, you fix something, which results again into people writing about it, and the circle is closed. Sometimes in big data or data analysis, you're not really interested about, like, I have a big heap of tweets and I want to figure out which ones are good, bad, and neutral. Sometimes I want to find the needle in the haystack, and actually finding the needle in the haystack, this one specific customer with the profile personalization, that's often a task where I need to go drill down and really see the piece of evidence. And for this, of course, machine translation is very important, because if that customer happens to write in a language I don't speak, I can machine translate the content and see what he was really talking or she was talking about. For this slide here, for this architecture, we need two components which I consider to be infrastructural, and I already talked about this yesterday. One thing is just the basic natural language processing. So the language detection, the natural language processing, the tokenization, part of speech tagging, named entity detection, just the basic stuff so that you can process text and can search for it, analyze it, and so on. And you need machine translation. But there's a second piece, and that's the knowledge. You need to somehow have the domain knowledge, the multilingual knowledge system, and especially in the public sector, this has been identified already as one prerequisite for any cross-border interoperability project. And also in this leaked document, there were bad stuff, that language is missing, but also very good stuff. They talk about the European interoperability framework. And the European interoperability framework says that the precise meaning of exchange information is understood by all stakeholders. And all stakeholders often means not only professionals, but the citizens out there, everybody, us. And it's preserved throughout exchanges, so that you can communicate with an office, and it communicates back. Information doesn't get lost in translation. So that you process the information linguistically neutrally. And for this, of course, you need to understand the information, you need to understand the knowledge, and you need to do this in a multilingual way. And the same is also true by eSense. In the eSense project, they have a strategic architecture template about semantics, and this is about domain knowledge mapping, semantic mapping services, and terminology services. So here you have already initiatives which go way behind automated translation, because translation is important, but it won't fix it. Yeah? We fall short if we say, with machine translation, we will fix the multilingual digital single market. And unfortunately, also in our community, many are following where the funding is, and missing this point. We need to push for a much more comprehensive solution. And luckily, smart people who think about government interoperability have already defined these things and see it as a much bigger problem than just a translation problem. And if we do this, if we be successful doing this, then a challenge, so what we are talking about, barriers and obstacles, actually becomes an opportunity for leadership. Because we won't catch up with the Americans on the other technologies. They're just way too much ahead of us. And even if we put $1 billion or $2 billion into big data projects, well, there's one single company in the US alone, IBM, which is putting the same money in one single project. Yeah? It's a lot of money, but it won't do it. But if we turn a challenge, if we turn the arc-European problem of handling many languages into an asset, and if we solve this, and if we, in spite of our many cultures and languages, create really a digital single market and cross-border e-government, then we have something really great, because the global market is definitely multilingual. And while in Europe many people accept English as some sort of a lingua franca, the global market definitely does not. So if we manage to build this, and if we invest in the right technology, if we recognize and appreciate language to be a problem, and if it finally shows up in these agendas and in these strategy papers where it should, well, then we have a chance to become the fittest for the global market, and that this wish for becoming a leader in ICT might come true. Thank you.